And now, Dr. Edward Gatz of Omaha, Nebraska, would like to share a personal story of a miracle that led to the canonization of St. John Jugan.
It's an honor for Jean and me to be here tonight. Yes, I am a recipient of a miracle. It happened some 24 years ago. I was a practicing physician, anesthesiologist, and our typical work week was 12 on, 12 off, 24 on, 24 off. That's 84 hours a week. And I was going on vacation, and I worked 100 hours a week. Now, there's a point for bringing this up. My vacation day started on Monday after the 100 hours, and I thought maybe I had cancer of the transverse colon, but it turned out to be of the esophagus. And that was incidental because I asked for an esophagoscopy besides the colonoscopy. When I awakened, my partner was there. He says, "Ed, here's a picture. It's bigger than the size of my fist." He says, "You've got about 4 to 6 months to live. We're hoping to be something else." I said, "Don, I'll come back tomorrow and I'll resign." So the next day I went back and resigned my position so I could be replaced. I went home. I was depressed. And I thought, well, what's good in a bad situation is I've got 4 months to prepare for final exams. Now, my family history is my dad was 39 pheasant hunting and dropped over dead. He'd loved to have had 4 days, 4 hours, 4 minutes maybe. My mother loved to have had 4 months, but it took her 14 months to die with her cancer. So I thought I got the best of all possibilities. I go in 4 months. I can get that job done. But I was depressed. Jean's brother-in-law was the pastor at St. Robert's Church in Omaha. He came over and said, "Ed, I'm just terribly sorry what's happened. Let me give you the anointing of the sick." And I'm making a real plea here for all of you to think of this as a powerful, powerful sacrament. Because I was so depressed, I didn't want to even think about the next day. I got the anointing, and I'm kind of like I am now, kind of half nutty, half here. It was 2 or 3 days later, our pastor came by, Father Foster, and he said, "Ed, I want to give you the anointing of the sick." I said, "Yes, Father, please do." After that, my golly, going to the Mayo Clinic was like going to a party. Let's take them on, let's go. We went to Mass and we got the Mayo Clinic, and the priest says, "Why are you here?" So we told him. He said, "Well, let me anoint you." 3 times. Each one was more powerful than the one before. It was kind of like 180 voices behind us. Each one is great. You put them together in a synergy. Same thing with the sacrament of the sick. I've got a runny nose that's I brought from Nebraska. So I went home. I expected to die. But one other thing I want to impart to you before I move on is that with these anointings, there was a sense of peace and joy and euphoria almost. And I had that when I woke up from anesthesia, from the radical surgery, and there was only a 50-50 chance they'd do the surgery. I had this huge cancer of the esophagus, distant metastasis. They weren't going to do surgery because it was going to be nothing but palliative. And there's a 5% mortality with the procedure, so why do it just for the sake of doing it? So there's a 50-50 chance they'd open and close. So I did luck out and got a 7-hour procedure where they removed the esophagus, the level of the nipple, T4, came down and removed half of the stomach. What was left they pulled up, and it's now behind my sternum. So that's where the spaghetti I just had is now, behind my sternum, next to my heart. But the point I'm making is that I had a gift, and it was with me for probably 7 weeks. And then my hands went back to normal because that was the diagnostic feature that got all this started. And when that left, I've been lonesome ever since. So my best guess is when they said, "Well, when did you receive the miracle?" My honest answer is I don't know, but it wasn't a snap of the finger. I think it happened over time, and it still happened for years later. It may even be happening now, because I've got functions coming back that anatomically I don't have, the machinery to do what's happened. Where would that come from? I got no embryonic stem cells. Nothing but evil comes from that. But adult stem cells we all have. If God so chooses, he can use those adult stem cells to heal us in any way that we need to be healing. And he can just do it by willing it. But that's the main reason that Jean and I are here. This is the beginning of the year of faith. And the powers of darkness have tried to destroy our faith for over 100 years. And if they can destroy our faith, they can destroy our hope. Because the first goal of darkness is to delete God. The second goal is to delete our independence, capitalism, whatever you want to call it. And lastly, to make us all subservient to a government. If that happens, there's no charity. If we have no charity, how do little sisters do what they do? They take a vow of hospitality, and we've seen it in 8 homes. My voice hasn't been the same since surgery, believe me. I apologize for them. So the little sisters are an inspiration to Jean and me and to everybody we know. And Jean Jugan was the one who, with Father McLoyne, chose me to be number 3. There were 2 miracles before mine. I believe that one of them is still alive. She's a mother at age 91. I believe it was breast metastatic everywhere. Terrible pain, got some radiation to ablate a nerve. And Rome said, well, it was the radiation that cured you. And that's silly. Radiation doesn't cure, in my opinion. That's why when it was offered to me at the Mayo Clinic, I said, will it cure me? They said, no. I said, well, will it increase the length of my life? They said, that's our hope. I said, well, if you won't cure me and guarantee me some percent of curing me, and you can't guarantee me extending my life, why would I have it? Doctor to doctor, I wouldn't have it done. Thank you. Chemotherapy. Now, I'm just talking about cancer of the esophagus. If there are doctors here who are oncologists, I'm not putting any of you down, believe me. You do things that I can't believe of, and for people that are so very desperate, God bless each and every one of you. But when they came in and offered me oncology, I said the same thing, are you going to cure me? No, yours can't be cured with chemo. I said, well, are you going to extend my life? And they said, we hope to. Why would I have it? Same answer. I wouldn't, doctor to doctor. So I didn't. It turns out 13 years after I got home, and after that feeling left me at 7 weeks, Jean and I were at a dinner, and next to me was Monsignor Broderson. And he wanted to know what I did, and I told him my story, and he said, well, you've turned that into Rome, haven't you? I said, no. Well, you should. It's a miracle. I said, yeah, I know. Every time I go up to the hospital with relatives or friends, the staff and the nurses all say, here comes Dr. Miracle. I said, no, I'm not. I'm a recipient of a miracle. We are all miracles. We've all had miracles in our lives. But the point here is 2 of them were rejected by Rome for Jean Jugan. I was the 3rd. That one was accepted. Now, Father McLoyne, with whom Jean prayed for my cure, told me before he died, last time Jean and I saw him, says, Ed, you're just the first of 5 medical cures I've had. And he told the nuns that were with him as he was dying, he says, if Ed's cause doesn't make it, I've got 4 more for you. So again, this is a matter of faith, faith in our God, turning our lives over to God, saying, what is your will, not what is my will, but please deliver us from all evil. That's my daily prayer, and we start by having a strong faith, knowing that win or lose our God, we always win with him. There are a couple other things I'll add, but I think I need to turn it over to Jean for a little bit.
It's just humbling to be here after this brilliant performance, such a moving performance, and touching, and makes us realize what the Little Sisters are, and well, I just feel especially humbled to speak with you tonight. I'll take you back to the day of the diagnosis when the bombshell was dropped on us, and Ed was really unprepared. We were unprepared. So we came home. The first thing I wanted to do was to start praying, get people praying. And so I thought, I've got to get help for this. So I called an old friend. I'd had him for Latin in college, and he was beloved by all the Jesuits, by all the students, and I thought the world of him. So I called him up and I said, Father McLoyne, Ed has been diagnosed with a terrible cancer, advanced cancer, and he only has 4 to 6 months to live. He said, well, what will he do? At that point, he was going to do nothing. He didn't want to suffer through treatments and so on, but his partner saw to it by checking with physicians to at least make it possible for him to swallow, although he never had a problem with swallowing. So Father said, well, he said, and he hesitated, which was not like him, because he was always so comforting and he had solutions for everything. And so he said, after quite a pause, he said to me, well, the doctors have never heard of Jean Jugan. And of course I hadn't either, because we don't have any Little Sisters in Omaha. So Father said, we are going to pray to her. She founded the Little Sisters of the Poor. And I remember him talking about it. We'd have our visits, and he'd talk about the Little Sisters of the Poor in Milwaukee. So I knew exactly the order he was talking about, but I had never heard of her saint, or the foundress. And at the time, she was blessed. He said, I'll get a hold of the novena, and you and I will start praying that novena every day without fail. So sure enough, I got the novena in the mail, but we started praying right away that day after we hung up the telephone, and we prayed a mental prayer to her. And then when we got the prayer, the novena prayer of hers, we started praying that. And when I got it in the mail, I got a letter with it from Father. And he said, St. John Jugan better get busy if she wants to become a saint. And it was just his way of being lighthearted. He always tried to lift people up who were suffering any kind of problem. So here we did, and all I can say is I could never memorize that prayer. I said it every day. I carried it with me wherever I went, and there wasn't a day that went by that we didn't say it. I always felt that if he were praying, I was merely a follow-along, and he would get the job done. But I wasn't going to give up on my part either. I kept saying, please, God, this is your spoiled child. I need Ed, and could you please spare his life? So she got in there and interceded for us, and he was cured, because the day of the surgery, which was to remove the huge tumor that would block off his ability to swallow, they didn't really do any more than that. Why, his partner and dear friend, Dr. Kerr, was up at the Mayo Clinic for the surgery, and he'd been in the operating room, and he'd carried the tumor down and so on, so there could never have been a mix-up of the tumors with anybody else's. And he said at dinner that night to my son and me, he said, well, you know, this will be back in 6 months, at the most 6 months. So that's something we really didn't need to hear after 6.5 hours of surgery, but it was the truth. And we went home, and so in the ensuing years, Ed went in for his CAT scans, and he'd come out, and I'd be sitting there, praying to the Blessed Mother, or saying my novena prayer to St. John Jugan, and the doctors had a nice, happy look on their face. He's still clean. He's still cured. So this went on for several years, and after 5 years, his internist wrote him a letter saying, "It's been a privilege caring for you because I have never had a survivor." And this really was stunning to the medical community in Omaha to think that he was still alive. So 13 years later, when it took a Monsignor to tell us, "You really should do something about this. You'd better notify some authority that this has happened, because this is a miracle." So I called up Father McLoyne again, and he says, "Well, how many years has it been now?" And I said, 13. He says, "Yes, I think you better do something about that." So that very weekend that all this was going on, this realization that we should get on the ball here, and there was a wonderful 2 young women, consecrated women, who traveled around the country and did things for the Catholic Church. So I was talking to this one. She was staying with us, and she was a beautiful person. And I said, I don't know where to start with this. I've got to get a hold of a Little Sister of the Poor, but they're not in Omaha. And she looked at me and said, "Well, call Mother Marguerite down in Kansas City." And she said, "We were there last night, so I know she's in the home." Now here I didn't even have to open a book, go on a website. I had the number handed to me. It's as if God just put everything in our path. He just guided us through this whole thing. And so we got a hold of Mother Marguerite. She wanted a letter. She was the perfect person to get a hold of. I really had the feeling that I was just standing back and God was giving me the work to do. And so it really wasn't a difficult task at all. And that's how the story all began. And we met the Little Sisters, and then the other miracles. I believe there was another miracle they were studying. They were working on that at the time, the Little Sisters. And so finally Ed's came up, and it was just fortunate that Mother Marguerite was on this, because she was so convinced that it was the one that she pursued it till his case was taken up. And then we were in Rome, 2009, on October the 11th, and watched St. John Jugan be canonized, and it was just a marvelous experience. So what a great group of her family, her sisters, are here now. And God did put her where he wanted her, in the novitiate, so that she could give her spirit to the Little Sisters and spread it out around the world. The marvelous homes we've been in, I just can't tell you the feeling you get the minute you walk in there. We're forever grateful. Every day is a day of thanksgiving to God for St. John Jugan, to her for her intercession, and look what we've benefited from her prayers, just us. And there are a lot of other miracles around because of her too, I know. So I thank you for this opportunity to hear our story, and the part that my small part in it, and we can all be so grateful to God for his mercy on all of us and have faith. I guess that's the main thing. The Pope wants us to have faith. And I have to tell myself, well, look what has been done for you. Now, why are you doubting anything now? So, you see, even with what we've received, I'm still asking God to increase my faith. So I thank you very, very much.
3 quick three quick paragraphs. First one is, when Jean was saying the novena every day, I tried to say it, and it was like a brick wall. Might as well pray to the box there. All my other prayers were working, but with her it was a brick wall. So I thought, no cure here. I'm moving on to St. Teresa and St. Francis Xavier. Not that I was praying for a cure. I never prayed for a cure. I never prayed for an extra month or a day or an hour. So at the inquest, when this was going down, and they had all the physicians that ever worked on me there testifying, it came up that how could this have happened, that we got this far and never turned it in. Well, a lot of things happened in between. One was a good friend of our son's who was going to medical school and became an anesthesiologist. As an anesthesiologist, he had a cousin who was 37 years old, worked for United Airlines in New York, and he was diagnosed with cancer of the esophagus. So Rich called the Mayo Clinic and wanted to talk to Dr. Trastic, who had done my surgery. And they ran him down eventually, and Rich talked to him and says, "Doctor, you don't know me, but I met you when you saved my best friend's life at the Mayo Clinic." And told him the story, and Dr. Trastic said, "I want you to be real clear about this. I didn't save Dr. Gatz's life. God did." He was a Christian, but not a Catholic. So this is a testimony from a physician and a Christian that carried a lot of weight. Well, on a lighter note, to finish up the first one, after the novena, after the canonization had happened, I could say the novena, and I say it every day now for many people, and it's working. But at the inquest, they said, "Did you pray the novena every day, and how did you pray it?" I said, "No, I didn't pray it." "Well, who did?" I said, "My wife and Father McCloyne." "Well, why didn't you pray it?" I said, "I tried, it didn't work." For me. So here I am saying that I was wrong. But lastly, I mentioned that it was a 100-hour week, and that reminds me that I had a small disability policy, as we all did. We had a group practice. And when I got home from the Mayo Clinic, wasn't home 2 weeks, and this insurance agent was there saying, "This is fraud. We're not going to pay you. You can't work 100 hours and then quit and work no more. We're not going to have that." I said, "Go away. I'll be dead in 6 months. You won't have to pay me anything. Just go away." Well, 6 months later, plus 2 years, I got a call from an oncologist, and he says, "Ed, you better come down here. They are questioning whether or not you really had cancer." I said, "Okay." So I went down and showed him my scars. Yeah, he knew that. He wanted to know about the tumor. The Mayo Clinic has a tumor registry. They keep them all. So they wanted to talk to the people in charge of the tumor registry, and they said, "This is the information they had that says correct." He said, "Did you do a particular study on this to prove the wildness of the cancer?" They said, "No, we weren't doing it at that time." He says, "Well, the insurance company is willing to pay for you if you run that test, because we'd like to know how wild the cancer was. We know how gigantic it was, and it was everywhere, but was it wild or not?" So they ran a self-flow cytometry, which looks at the DNA of the ploidy. It came back aneuploid, wildest of the wild. Now, how much evidence do you have to present for canonization at Rome? I think that was enough. Particularly when I was, at that time, 17 years post-op. So faith is what's gotten us through, what's gotten our friends through, and I have faith that all you will stay loving friends and little sisters, and having them in your prayers for their vocations and for the vocations of our priests. God bless each and every one of you. And thank you for your performance.